So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ahmaduhu wa usalli ala Rasulil Kareem, amma ba'd, fa'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli, Ameen ya Rabb. So today I want to talk about King Charles' agenda with specific reference to the Muslim world. And this is going to be, I think, a very important talk of mine because it will help us understand where the world is and where it's going and why. And let me start off with some basic things that are being said, you can say, because, the world is interested. This is a very good, by the way, Middle East Eye. They usually have very good articles. So Prince Charles, King Charles, Charles III may become, how the new king became the most pro-Islam monarch in British history. This, in a sense, is true, but it's not the complete story. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, because some people are saying, oh, this king might become Muslim, or he's given good lectures about Islam at Oxford University. He's studied the Quran. That's all true. But there's certain basic things that if you don't go beyond that, you won't understand the bigger picture. And so my attempt here is to give the bigger picture with the historical context. And so I don't want all of you just to listen to what I'm saying, but I want you also to penetrate into how am I coming to these conclusions, or what is the methodology that is being used to actually study the issue. And how does all of this, of course, at the end of the day, relate to the Quran? This is all very important. So let me make my first point here, that it is our hope as Muslims that anyone becomes Muslim, whether they're important or not important. Of course, if somebody is like Abu Talib, like in the case of the Prophet ﷺ, the uncle of the Prophet, he helped the Prophet and supported the Prophet and supported the Muslims at a time where Islam was weak. So that's a good thing. So if, like Tony Blair's sister, I think she became Muslim. So it's not something that is impossible to happen. But at the same time, I think we expect other big people to become Muslims partly because we feel inadequate ourselves. And we hope, some big king like King Charles will become Muslim, and somehow that will be a panacea for us, or an answer for our problems. And the truth is that that's usually not going to be the case. It's not going to be, and I learned this as I also, when I was younger and I'd see people convert to Islam and be like, wow, they converted to Islam, I want to know your story. And I was very impressed with that, the idea that other people become Muslim. Now, as I deal with people who become Muslim, actually dealing with them, their baggage, their history, whether it's divorces, bad relationships, their anger issues that they come into Islam with. So it's not very easy for a convert to come in and be like the panacea of the Muslims. I mean, they're becoming Muslims so that we'll help them, and we're putting our hopes on them. So it's always a good thing if somebody becomes Muslim. That's always a possibility. But at the same time, to kind of like forecast somebody who become a Muslim, this is not the actual way to go. So let me go back to where I was so I can go on to my other important points that I want to mention. Because I'm going to mention things that are going to shock people that how easily we make statements. Now, over here, I want to mention something very important. This is what I'm going to say is a fact. Okay, this is a fact. It's a political fact. It's a political reality. And that is that at first, when people were thinking, okay, how can we move forward with Muslims? And the answer is that we'll coerce the Muslims we will force Muslims into a world that we want. And so Samuel Huntington, Francis Fukuyama, these political scientists, they wrote books on, okay, we're going to move forward and we're going to bring capitalism into the Middle East. We're going to bring democracy into the Middle East. And but lo and behold, they brought democracy to Iraq. What happened? They still voted for the Islamic Party, right? If you give Muslims a chance, they'll still vote for the Islamic Party. And so this was not the way to go, because the way that they wanted things to go, it was always going to be Islamic ideas coming on top. So if you can't win them, join them. Then Henry Kissinger wrote the book called The World Order, which I'll show you in a second. And Henry Kissinger was probably the first major politician that said, look, we're not going to beat them with this idea of clash of civilization. This is not going to happen. They're too big. We can't convince them this way. The only way we're going to convince them is somehow we find a way to make them join us. And lo and behold, the Abrahamic Accords were born. And so the West, not just Prince Charles, but the West in general, has been making an effort to make peace with the Muslims, whether it's through Abrahamic Accords, whether it is through Prince Charles' speeches, whether it's through the universities and their academic conversations about Orientalism versus Occidentalism, so there is an attempt now in this political scene that we live in to understand that there is an attempt by the West, and this will become much more clear to you as we continue in this conversation. I'll make it more clear, inshallah, that there is a very strong need from the perspective of the intellectuals, that we have to get along with the Muslims to make the world go in the direction that they want. So, for example, JINSA, just as an example, the Jewish Institute of National Security of America is dedicated to educating, congressional, military, civilian, national security decision makers on American defense and strategic interests, primarily on the Middle East. Meaning, how can we shape the future of the Middle East to our liking, right? There's been a lot of academic work done on this. Look at the Rand report that was done in Civil Democratic Islam. Same thing. So they realized they're not going to be able to force Muslims into a certain lifestyle or a certain way of living. This became very clear. So what did they start doing? Well, they started, writing papers about how can we bring Muslims on board, on ship, okay? So Prince Charles' Middle East trip for religious tolerance. It's not about Islam as much as it is about, you can say, Abrahamic faiths. It's about perennialism. We're all on the same boat idea. The idea that we're all the same. The idea that, you're Muslim, we're Christians, they're Jews. We hold a lot of values in common. So this is one aspect that's definitely playing a role. There's absolutely no question about this. When you look at, and I'll talk about King Charles shortly, but Henry Kissinger, this is the book I was talking about. He wrote the book called The World Order. And he was probably the first one in the West to say that there is no way that we're going to force the Muslims, in contrast to what Samuel Huntington was saying in his book, Clash of Civilization. that we have to find a way. Now, remember, those of you that have been studying and reading should know the importance of Henry Kissinger. He is a key person. He is the one who started the petrodollar economic system. Literally, he's the person that went to Saudi Arabia in 1973, I think it was, or 72, and sat with King Faisal and said, look, let's do this. He's the guy. He's the guy that got Bhutto killed in Pakistan. He's the guy who got Ziaul Haq, the doing martial law. He's the one who chose Ziaul Haq to become the general, the martial law, because he helped kill 25,000 Palestinians in Jordan. This is a long discussion, but the point is that Henry Kissinger is a major politician, and he thought that we're not going to be able to do what we want unless we get people, key people in the West, becoming softer on the Muslims. Okay, and so this is playing a big role in what's happening in regards to the Abrahamic Accords. And so, like, for example, you know, so they're coming out with a stronger, wider peace, a U.S. strategy for advancing Abrahamic Accords. And of course, Prince Charles is playing a very important role in the Abrahamic Accords. He is playing a very big role at many different levels, which I'm going to show to you. I'm going to show many layers of this king and his past and what he belongs to, so that we get a bigger view of what's going on. Now, of course, I talked about Tony Blair's sister. She became Muslim. So, you know, Al Jazeera has also been writing about, everybody's interested in the Muslim world, trying to figure out what is his views about Islam. Why? Because he said something good about Islam. This, you know, how many people have spoken good about Islam only to find out that, wait, we didn't, what we thought was not really true. I'll give you a very good example of that. If you all remember when Obama became president, he went to Egypt. That was his first, I think, foreign speech that he gave. And he talked about the same idea, Islam, Muslims, great, you know, but what ended up happening? Obama ended up killing more Muslims than anyone before him or after him, meaning much more than Trump and Biden. And he killed more Muslims through the drones in Pakistan and so on and so forth than anyone before. So, you know, giving a good speech about Islam doesn't mean that you're not going to do atrocities, which I'll be more clear about that, inshallah, shortly too. Because once I get to what I really want to say, then things will become more clear. So, you know, 5,000 Muslim men pledge allegiance and royalty to the nation over the weekend. So this is this is very interesting to me and very sad to me, because when I finally finish saying everything I want to say, inshallah, I'll try to say it quickly. But by the time I finally finish, you'll find that this is actually quite disgusting and quite silly and stupid. Okay, so Bismillah. And of course, that's the Ahmadiyya community doing that. They've always been, you can say, with the British government. Now, one of the people that Prince Charles is very influenced by is this man called Van der Post. Okay? Van der Post was a mentor of King Charles. And like it happens is in the Quran, with every Fir'aun, there's magicians. I'll show you this history. But every Fir'aun has to have magicians, because every Fir'aun wants something magical to happen in his life. He wants the impossible to happen, so he needs magicians. And so he's not, yeah, the Ismailis are close to royalty. So Van der Post was Jungian mystic and spiritual advisor to Prince Charles. According to British newspapers, he taught the prince to talk to plants. In 1982, Charles made him the grandfather to his heir, Prince William. Van der Post was also a close friend of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Okay. All right, let's continue. Again, this is more about this particular person was a friend and mentor to Britain's Prince Charles. Okay, so this was one of the people of the occult and people of kind of like mystic paranormal knowledge. Even Charles is going to say something about this, but let me share this with you. Royal witches, witchcraft and nobility in 15th century England. This is just to make the point that, you know, it's not just Prince Charles who just picked up some guy. This has been there in their family for a very, very long time. Okay, they've been dealing with mystics and astrologers from the very, very beginning. And so I'm going to share that a little bit with you and so you'll see. So so Prince Diana, who was killed or not killed, I don't know. The princess said she was horrified at the vast attention paid to her by the media when there was more important things going on in the world. Charles, 36, in a suave, relaxed manner, said he isn't interested in the occult or dabbling in black magic, but that he thought parapsychology and perhaps alternative medicine should be investigated with an open mind. He added, well, yes, I think I'm becoming more eccentric as I get older, probably. And so this, you know, Prince, you know, tries to bury rumors of the occult, but they were there, and they were there for good reasons. Of course, the royal family's troubling connection to Jeffrey Epstein. If you remember, this is the guy that had the island that Bill Gates went to. And this is, you know, Prince Charles' son. Okay, so, you know, he has Prince Andrew. He has a relationship with this guy that was basically doing human trafficking, and has a relationship with this guy that has all these wild sexual acts, homosexual acts in this island. So everybody knows about this. Okay. So this is just a conversation that somebody has, which I'm not going to play here right now. And then, of course, you know, there were a lot of these rumors, which I'm not going to go into rumors right now, but there were rumors that, you know, that they had drugged people and kidnapped people, and there was an arrest warrant, and then they put a stop to it. There is people that have said from the royal family, from workers in the royal family, that they seem to have connections with Satanists and Queen Elizabeth's court occultists. This is also a fact. This is not just a thought, but Dee, who was another one of these magicians in the royal family before Prince Charles, was believed with Queen Elizabeth, I think the first, was believed to be believed that he conversed with angels, meaning jinns. His interest in mathematics extended well into the realms of numerology. Elizabeth trusted Dee's knowledge in this area, and it was he who selected her coronation date, based on his mystical and astrological calculations. Okay, and here's a more of a historical view of this aspect. Royals in occult, witchcraft, astrology, mystery, healing. And this is, you know, Elizabeth and her mother, and it goes on and on about the British history. Charles and Charles VII of France, a scholar of occult. So these are all these people in the royal family that are Isabella, bewitching presence. So this is not something new. The paranoid king, right? This headless witch lady that was also part of the royalty. Elizabeth I and John Dee, we just talked about her. Okay. And so it continues. So the Fir'auns of the world always have a relationship, when they're not on guidance, with the paranormal, with the things that, are part of the satanic world. And this is just touching on the surface, because you can have a whole conversation just on this, right? And so royals and the spirit world, this is basically saying the same thing. But it gets worse. See, this is just the beginning. And we know the ayah in Quran that talks about the kingdom of Suleiman and magic. So kingdom and power and magic are interrelated. Now, of course, up till the point that Queen Elizabeth, the one that died, she was there when Lawrence of Arabia and the British was using the Muslims to fight against the Ottomans to bring down the Khilafah, World War I, World War II, the bringing down of the Caliphate. She was all part of this, okay? She was there when hundreds and thousands of Muslims were killed in India. She was there when the famine was done, because people change with time, right? Somebody's a racist, and then a new law comes in, you can't be racist. So they stop saying the racist things, but the feelings they have of racism are still there. So this is exactly, State of Israel was formed, in 1948, while she was, I think, the queen, because she became the queen in 1930 something. And so, I mean, this is the household that many Muslims are looking forward to, that, when India's Muslim scholars died for a courageous rebellion, Muslims in India and in other places fought very bravely against the British. There were 3 basic attempts. I don't want to go into that history, but they say that almost every village had a scholar hanging by the tree in India at that time. Sheikh, just to give you an idea of our heritage on this issue, that Sheikh al-Hind Mahmud al-Hassan rahmatullah alayh, he started what was called the handkerchief movement against the British. And he tried to start a movement to stop the Ottomans from falling. But they caught him eventually, put him in jail for, I forget how long, for many, many years, more than a decade. He was in jail in Malta. And Iqbal wrote a poetry about that they were scared of even his pulse, of his heartbeat in India. So they had took him out. And so that was one of the attempts to try to undo what the British were doing. But it gets worse. I mean, in a sense, killing so many Muslim scholars by hundreds of thousands, literally. The Bengal famine, how the British engineered the worst genocide in human history for profit. So, our expectations from people should be the British Raj, the atrocities of the British colonial rule in India. That's just one of the countries. But you'll see where I'm going with all of this. There's a reason I'm bringing all this up. Also, be aware that so what have I said so far? Number one, that there is now a trend in academics and in politics that we have to embrace the Muslim world, but embrace it in a way so that we can have our agenda work, rather than fighting the Muslim world, which was, you can say, pre 9/11 and even post 9/11 to a great degree. The idea was, okay, let's fight the Muslim world, but things didn't happen like was assumed, that we'll conquer Iraq and they'll say, hey, we love this. This is what we always wanted. Shaitan made them fight the heartland, in a sense, Afghanistan. They didn't get the results they wanted there either. And they kind of realized this is not going to work. So they had to come out with a second plan. The second plan was, well, if you can't win them, embrace them. So let's embrace them. But this embrace is a very cunning embrace. It's a very deceptive embrace. Okay. And so it's like, and so that's one aspect. Second, who are the key people playing a role in this deceptive embrace? And one of the key people playing a role, as I will show you, inshallah, one of the key people playing an absolute key role in the World Economic Forum, in all of this, is King Charles. And he is a person who's been known to dabble in the occults, in the paranormal. He's learning how to talk to trees, for God's sakes. Okay, his mentor was an occultist, one of them, right? Studied and was proclaimed to be a specialist in Carl Jung's thinking, who also was attached to the occult world. And so, and not only he, but his whole family, the whole European royalty, has been attached to occults and magic and all of that at some level. But while they're doing that, this is the interesting point, they're also head of the church, right? So they are the Church of England. Who is the head of the Church of England is the king and the queen of that time. And so the head of the Church of England is Prince Charles. And so the Church of England kicks out the word devil out of baptism when they do their baptism, and they would say, you will not follow the devil and stay away from devil's temptation. And they change the words, okay? The simplified wording. Let's see if this comes back. The simplified wording was written after the priest said the traditional service was unnecessarily complex and might confuse people who are not regular church goers. So the new wordings approved Sunday. So they changed the word of their, of their baptism. Approved Sunday, July 13th, only asks whether parents and godparents will turn away from sin and reject evil. Okay, so they took Satan out of the whole picture. Church of England, and who's in charge of the Church of England? Prince Charles. Now, I'm not saying that that's proof that he worships the devil, even though doing magic and paranormal stuff is basically heading in that way. Church of England, evil, says archbishops. Views on homosexuality under attack. Actually, I looked this up. And if you go to Church of England, the Church of England doesn't want you to worry about the devil. This is about the same issue. But let me show you this from their own website. Of course, what did they say? The Church of England says attack on Ukraine is an act of great evil. Okay. But what else do they say? And remember, now this was the Queen that was in charge of the Church of England, and now it will be the king that will be in charge of the Church of England. Archbishops recall commitment to pastor care and friendship for all, regardless of sexual orientation. Right. So this is so this person that people have high hopes that he's going to be the best friend of Muslims. That's great. That may be even true to some degree, as long as you go along with his agenda of what he sees for Muslims. But he's also head of the Church of England. Okay. And so there is something to be said about that. Now, before I go forward, I need to say something important that's politically very important. Number one, we live in a world where no one country has the power to maneuver now what their agendas are without alliances with other countries. That time is gone now, where even America could exert its muscle and its power without its friends. Okay, Russia can't do it, China can't do it, no one can do it. After the British have left the EU, they need a new sort of power of alliance, which is going to be probably the most important thing I'm going to talk about in a second. But for one thing, so on the one side, you can't function in the international world right now without alliances. And the second thing is, people are becoming tired of socialism and democracy. And so the marketing team of the royalty has worked very hard since the 1990s to give royalty a very good image. And when I talk about the Commonwealth, and you'll see the nations that are in the Commonwealth, these are countries that essentially, believe it or not, even though they have their own independence, countries like Pakistan, even though they have their own independence, but essentially at a very tacit level still say the Queen is our queen by becoming part of the Commonwealth, which when you become part of the Commonwealth, then what happens is that then the gates are opened for you to finances, the IMF, the World Bank, so you can run your countries. Also, let me mention, what did the Queen do, politically speaking? What is King Charles going to do, politically speaking? They're not like the World Bank or the United Nations or other international organizations that put in laws in place and force you to do things. The wealth of nations, the 32 or 52 countries that the British once ruled, that are still under the monarchy at a very tacit level. So what did she do? What did the Queen do? She would invite the prime ministers to her palace or have events where people would have an audience with her, a time with her. Every 4 years, they would play sport. I'm going to show this to you so it becomes more clear. But it was the soft power. It was these were 32 nations that took British law and applied it in their countries, including Pakistan, including Bangladesh, including India, including the other Muslim countries, Malaysia, for example. That was what the Commonwealth had in common. They had the ability to trade more easily because they all had the same common law, which of course is shirk because you're using laws other than Allah's. And so let me now continue from here, okay? So their loyalty in terms of religion is with the Church of England. So again, this has to do with the Abrahamic Accords. What is that? King Charles to be the defender of faith, but also a defender of faiths. So it's not like he loves Islam and wants to become Muslim. From the standpoint of the position he has as his position. I mean, we don't know what's in people's hearts. We don't judge people on their hearts. We have no need to judge people on their hearts, right? So in terms of his position, he's head of the church, and he is in charge of a whole commonwealth of nations. And that commonwealth of nations includes Muslims. So he's going to be the defender of faith and defender of faiths. Because Prince Elizabeth saw countries like Pakistan, India, being under her at a political level. And so she's the one. This is why, even till today, those people that will, like, especially it's easy for Muslims in Pakistan to see this, that are living in the West, especially, that why Britain plays such a big role even till now, because it is the British that have a relationship with the prime ministers and the presidents and the armies and the army generals. Everything is centered around what England is saying, even till today. Just that before they had direct rule, now they have an indirect rule via the Commonwealth. They didn't just leave and say, okay, well, you guys are on your own. And even though we've been, sucking your blood, but we're going to just stop. It doesn't happen like that. They created something called the Commonwealth, and they created a group of countries that they ruled, about 30% of the world, more than 2 billion people. I'm going to show this to you. And they created a very soft power, organization called the Commonwealth. And so why am I saying this? I'm saying this because as democracy and socialism, people lose trust. And as the marketing team of the king does its job, more and more people are going to look up to the royalty, to the kings. And there's something about kingship that's an archetype, right? It's like part of, like, you can say, deep in the human consciousness. We look up to kings, right? And so this is, now you'll also find why it's in their interest to promote things like, oh, we belong to the family of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's just a bunch of bogus. But it's to their advantage to do this type of kind of like publicity, right? It's like, it's too much. It's like a TV script at that point. Prince Charles arrives for traditional Sunday church service. You know, that's what he does. He's loyal to the church. King Charles vows to protect the security of the Church of Scotland. Okay, so now, of course, I think Prince Charles is going to be a lot more aggressive and a lot more active. Now, this is what some Christians are saying, maybe. Britain's Queen Elizabeth is dead, Charles is king, and we'll get into that, I guess. So now let's look at two other aspects that are very important here. One very interesting speech that Charles gave. Let me see if I can find that here. Where Prince Charles used a very interesting word when he was, let's see where this is. It's okay, I can find it here, hold on. Now, in this statement that Prince Charles gave, as you will hear, let me just add you guys to this.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us just how devastating a global cross-border threat can be. Climate change.
Let's see if I can. So, I don't want to go through the whole 7 minutes.
And biodiversity loss are no different. In fact,
this was his speech that he gave in the United Nations. And he basically said, you know, we have trillions of dollars, and he mentions a he. Let me see.
Urgently, and take action to tackle the carbon already in the atmosphere, including from coal-fired power stations, and leveraging the circular bioeconomy will be vital to our efforts. As we tackle this crisis, our efforts cannot be a series of independent initiatives to come together to create.
Over here, he's talking about having a world government, right? So we have to all work together as world government. Of course, he's now the king, but I mean, at this point, he was not.
The environment that enables every sector of industry to take the action required. We know this will take trillions, not billions of dollars.
Now, notice what he says here. No, look at that word he. Who is he?
We also know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector. With trillions at his disposal.
With trillions at his disposal. Who is he referring to? Is he referring to himself, or is he referring to somebody else? Who is this his? Let me let you listen to this again.
To create the environment that enables every sector of industry to take the action required. We know this will take trillions, not billions of dollars. We also know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at his disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders. It offers the only real prospect of achieving fundamental economic transition. So, how do we do it? First, how do we get the private sector all pulling in the same direction? After nearly 2 years now of consultation, CEOs have told me that we need to bring together global industries to map out, in very practical terms, what it will take to make the transition.
Okay, so everybody heard that. Sorry.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my plea today is for countries to come together to create the environment that enables every to know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at his disposal.
With trillions at his disposal. Slip of the tongue, he wrote his own speech. Somebody wrote it for him. He's talking about himself. His speechwriter was writing it for him. Allah knows best. But what can be said is that, yes, he does represent the global agenda. He is head of the Church of England. He has said some good things about Muslims because he has to in order for make the Abrahamic Accord to work. He has to say good things about Islam if he wants to create a global government. He has to say good things about Islam if he wants Muslims to get along with the Christians and the Jews and to create the environment that they're looking forward to create. Okay, so I think I made my point there. So, you know, Prince Charles says, time has quite literally run out. Okay, Prince Charles speaks at World Leaders event. And this is what he said, that we need to, you know, do this whole environment thing. And what's the environment thing really partly about, necessarily about, whether you like it or not? It means only the rich have the money to do things in a way that will be environmentally satisfactory to the UN and to the world leaders. So only the rich get to move forward, and the poor people, you know, don't get to move forward under the circumstances. But guess what? There's no carbon blueprint for an expensive yacht. You can look that up. Pandemic is a chance to reset global economy, says Prince Charles. So as you can tell, what's one big key difference between him and his mother? Well, Prince Charles is a lot more politically active. He has a lot more political things to say. So this means that he's going to be a lot more politically active with his agenda, which involves the Muslim world. This is why it's not just a question of, oh, you know, Muslims say that he's going to become Muslim or he's so pro-Muslim. You got to get beyond that. You got to get beyond into, okay, what is his agenda? Where is he putting his money? Where is he putting his funds? And so this is all very important for that reason. But and of course, the other reasons I mentioned, which is, you know, his occult associations, his being head of the Church of England at the same time, which is kind of weird. His being liberal in terms of gays and lesbians. Charles Schwab and Prince Charles on why we need to get a reset. Listen to the podcast, right? So this is Charles Schwab and Prince Charles. I'll leave this out, but this is a report from the World Economic Forum. This is kind of interesting. If you look at this picture, this is a picture of the Rothschild poking the chest of King Charles now. We don't know what they're saying, but the demeanor is, you know, that at least one can say they have some sort of acquaintance and friendship or relationship with each other that can be translated in many different ways, including just from the demeanor. It's like one person is poking his finger. And I'll tell you something in sociology that's very interesting from a body language perspective. That is that when you show this side of your hand, usually it intends good, cross culture, cross globally. Okay, so this shows peace, and anything from this side or pointing a finger usually is negative. Usually is a sign of something negative. Okay, so just keep that in mind, right? So, all right, let's continue, inshallah. So let me now talk about the Commonwealth, which is a new enterprise that's going to reach. Oh, let me also mention this. Yes, of course, they were buying and selling slaves. Okay. The British Empire was very much involved in the merchandise of selling slaves. And this would be an interesting time to also mention Charles' succession stirs, Caribbeans called for reparations, removal of monarch as head of state. Because of the royal family, slavery, colonialism, and race, right? And so now the countries that are part of the Commonwealth, this is just a map to show you Australia, Canada, parts of Africa, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they were all part of the Commonwealth, okay? And this is where England's soft power is. This is why all of these countries, they still have the British system of education, the British system of law, the British system of, this is the royal family original slave relics museum that they have. But Throne of Blood, it's time for the British royal family to make amends for centuries of profiteering from slavery. This is, of course, there. So, what happens when 5 ways the monarch has benefited from colonialism and slavery. And one of them is the Commonwealth. And so this is so the Commonwealth is an organization of 52 independent and equal member states. This Commonwealth is going to be key in the future of Britain's okay, yeah, of course, I wanted to mention this. Documents that reveal Duke of Windsor's Nazi alliances. You see Harry, for example. This is an established historical fact. There's like no issue with this. Let's see if I can show you something more here about this. So let me just go to the Commonwealth. 56 countries, 2.5 billion people. And this is Britain's, you can say, United Nations, but it's not a United Nations where things are done legally. It's a United Nations where the king or the queen is in charge, but at a very tacit level, at a very soft power level. It's more like at the, if you're part of this, right, then you can get extra funds from the World Bank. These are countries, most of these are, except for a few, most of these are all countries the British ruled. Okay, and they're still under British rule, just not through hard power, just through soft power. Now, these are some of the Muslim countries, for example, Pakistan, Malaysia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, they're all part of this. They used more of a hard power even after the independence in the Middle East, but Middle East actually countries are not really part of this that much. Malta was the country I was telling about where Sheikh al-Hadith Mahmoud al-Hassan was taken in prison. Okay, so these are the countries that are part of the Commonwealth that basically consider and love the King and Queen of England. Now, who loves? Let me explain that. It's the prime ministers and the presidents and the armies. They get a special presence with the Queen, and they get special favors with the Queen. This is why the Ahmadis are so loyal to the Queen. This is why the Ismailis and the Ahmadis are so loyal to the Queen, because they have done what the British has done with the people, they've done with their own people, meaning sucked the blood of their own people and taken their money and then throw a few chunk money to the British Empire still. But this is what it is. The Queen understands the politics, for example, of Pakistan. And when she'll talk to Imran Khan, she'll know what his issues are. But it's not it's not hard power, it's soft power. And then she'll relay that message to the other person. So she becomes important. And Prince Charles is going to do this, especially with the Abrahamic Accords, especially with the World Economic Forum. They're going to do this, use this soft power now to bring alliances. That's the deception. Everyone thinks that they're doing this on their own, right? But it's not. It's soft power that's very powerful, because you get 19% more trade because you're part of the Commonwealth, for example. Let me see what is being said here. Sheikh, in Afghanistan, the British have kept their agents over the course of the last 300 years, especially since the Second War. Okay. I swear, Sheikh, to he's Alfred. I swear, Sheikh, to okay. Was not known by Americans. It was the British intel agencies that introduced him to the Americans, and he became president overnight. Yeah, that makes sense. There is this woman named Anna Vaughan who has done extensive writings on the relationship between the British monarchy and U.S. corporations. Okay, so let me just take this and add this to... Okay, I'll come back to this. So these are the countries in the Commonwealth. So British Empire is still ruling, just not with a stick, but by, you can say, persuasion. And this is how no one really hears about Commonwealth of Nations. But these are all nations that the Queen goes to because they used to rule it. And so, for example, if she went to Kenya, they would have like a big celebration. The Queen is coming to Kenya, or the Queen is coming to India, or the Queen is coming to Africa or Nigeria. And you can look that up. I'm just going to move on. Prince Charles was asked about the skin color. Oh, of course, they have Nazi type white supremacist ideas. So Prince Charles was asked about the skin color of Meghan Markle's baby. New book claims, right? But let me see if I can. So this is the Commonwealth future, and so they're putting a lot of emphasis, especially since they've left the EU. Was Edward a Nazi sympathizer, etc., etc.? Let me just show you this too. I can. This is Harry. And so tell me, you know, if their great-grandfather was a Nazi sympathizer and Queen Elizabeth was taught to be a sympathizer when she was young, and then Harry is also wearing that symbol. So what's going on here? I don't know, but it does make somebody, this is the Queen, by the way, of Queen Elizabeth II, alleged Nazi salute, probably by the son. So this is a picture of her taking the salute. This is pretty much accepted that, you know, she did this, but people change with times. And so when it's no longer politically convenient, and so this is an example of, you know, Commonwealth and Pakistan's relationship in the Commonwealth. Pakistan and the Commonwealth. Pakistan is a member of the Commonwealth, is one of the countries who got freedom from the British rule. Pakistan emerged as an independent state on the 14th of August, 1947. And so this is all those countries that they, again, Malaysia, same thing. And every 4 years they have games. And, you know, this is how they've been using soft power, for example, is by these games that they play. They have kind of like an Olympics of the Commonwealth sport, and they promote the game called cricket is primarily promoted by the Commonwealth, which is played amongst especially countries that were ruled by the British. So that you can say is the, in a sense, is the game of the Commonwealth. Okay, it symbolizes this is the game that is like the game of the king and the queen of the that is attached to the royalty. Malaysia, located in Southeast Asia, has been an active member of the Commonwealth since 1957. And there's a lot more to this, but this is very, very important to understand that. And if you look at the symbolism of the Commonwealth, right, it's all about ruling and ruling the world, for that matter. Okay. And also, if you see the cross in the middle of the shield, so that's also a part of it. So when they play their Commonwealth Glory games, Pakistan has managed to secure a decent 18th position in recently concluded Commonwealth Games of 2022 after bagging a total of 8 medals, including 2 precious golds. Now, these are things people may not know that are happening behind the scene, but these sports are used, of course, to create that type of soft power that's needed to move into the future. So what is this person's agenda? This person is going to promote a global agenda on the Muslims. He's not there to sympathize with Muslims from the perspective of, I'm interested in what's true, but rather from the perspective of his job that's assigned to him, which is, you're in charge of this Commonwealth. This includes Muslims. You have to get to know them, understand them, see where they're coming from. And you can impress them with your Arabic, and you can impress them with your Islamic knowledge. And you're a good spokesperson. You're not a politician. You're a king. And then, of course, his racism, his ties to the occult, his weird speech talking about his disposal, having trillions of dollars at his disposal, his more aggressive kind of like agenda to push the agenda, push the Abrahamic Accord. He's a defender of not just his faith, but faiths, right? So this whole perennialism, all these 3 religions, they're like equal type push, saying things like, oh, maybe we, belong to the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of this is to put dust on the face of the Muslims. So the Muslims are like, oh, because we're just dying for someone that is important and in politics to say something good about Islam. And they know this, but they have their own agendas. And like I said, they've already tried the route of forcing the Muslim hands or forcing our arms, and it didn't really work. It didn't work in Egypt because when the Ikhwan al-Muslimun, they had the election, Ikhwan won there. When in Iraq they had elections, the Muslim party won there. Even though they bought democracy, Muslims wanted Islam. And so they saw what happened in Algeria. So they've seen this, and they understand that, what is it that they're not willing to accept? What they're not willing to accept is a Sharia-based environment. That's what they can't accept. They can't accept a Sharia-based economy, a Sharia-based society, because that would do away with all of the corporations. You can't even privatize oil. in Islam because you don't own oil, you don't own air, you don't or water. It's the public property. So, I mean, they do all these ways of making money through haram. And so what they are not willing to accept is a Sharia. And this is why Saudi Arabia is now changing away from its Sharia-based Islam very quickly, because that is part of the agenda. If you can't win them, join them and influence them with greed and influence them with, you know, like this is the way to go. So what will be the end result of this? Another thing to consider is the possibility of Charles being the railroad to endorsing CBDC. I don't know what CBDC is. What is CBDC? Oh, okay, yes, definitely. That's definitely going to be part of the global agenda. Yep, that will definitely be part of the package. But what I want to share with you is this, is that they're going to build this and it's all going to fall apart. And the whole world is going to be in disarray when it falls apart. It's going to fall apart. And it's going to be in complete disarray. And as it falls apart, every single city of the world is going to be in a state of chaos. So they're leading the world into this reset, but this reset will never really happen. It will reach a point and then it will just all crash for some reason. I don't know why yet, but for some reason it will crash. And the Quran is very clear about this, and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is very clear about this. But I'm going to talk about that maybe Thursday or Friday on that specific topic. But what I wanted to be clear is that Prince Charles is going to try to be friends and buddy up with the Muslims and say a lot of good things. Probably he's going to do that. But he will do it based upon his agenda and not because he is so interested in becoming Muslim. And, you know, this is really what I wanted to address today. If anybody has anything else to add, he's a globalist. He wants a world government. He's preparing something for his trillions of dollars. He's part of the occult world. He's head of the Church of England that accepts gays and lesbians. And he has some good things to say about Islam. So, I mean, he has something good to say about Islam, but he spent his whole life learning the occult and how to talk to a tree. He spent his whole life being in a family that was supporting the Nazis. This is a fact. He spent his whole life, seeing his government do atrocities and the British Raj do atrocities, and they've remained, you would say, helplessly silent, considering the amount of damage that they did, not even as sorry. And so, you know, I don't think we should overemphasize his lecture more than it needs to be. All it is, it's part of the Abrahamic Accords. It is part of the agenda to sympathize with Muslims so that they can get Muslims on the same bandwagon as them. It is to sympathize with the Muslims so the Saudi government will be like, oh, he loves Islam, he likes Islam, you know, he says good things about Islam, he understands Islam, he even understands the Quran. So we should, you know, he's our sympathizer. And so this is where the trick is. The trick is that's what Dajjal does. Dajjal, will fool the people that I'm here for your good. He will look like a Muslim. He will act like a Muslim. He will be very spiritual. So, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So if anybody has any specific questions, I will take that, and maybe I'll answer a few questions and then we can call it a day, inshallah. Yes, exploring trends.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Hope you're well.
Alhamdulillah.
I was wondering, Jazakallah for all the information you provided is very helpful. I was wondering later on if you address another topic on Charles, if one thing you can maybe focus on is the fact that Charles is a big fan of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, there's 17 of these goals, Ustad, and a lot of them is about banking the unbanked and creating new forms of education, for example, and net zero, all the rest of it.
Oh, brother.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me, Ustad?
Yeah, I can hear you. What is it called? You just mentioned it.
Oh, SDGs. If you just write SDG, then it should come up. The Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the reason I mentioned this, Ustad, is because I've been speaking to a lot of people who are very knowledgeable about this whole climate agenda business. And what they're telling me is that in the future, and they're not so, in the near future, what a lot of the elite policymakers are going to tell us is that, look, the natural world is just destroying before our eyes. The natural world is going to be so unappealing and is going to be so uninhabitable that the only way that the citizens of the world can live sustainably is by entering the virtual realm. And that's probably going to be the metaverse, Ustad. So I think that is something that's probably a connection we can piece together later on. I just wanted to just mention that.
Yeah, no, this is something that definitely needs to be looked into. I think this whole, carbon prints thing seems like another fake science thing, like Circus 19 to me as of now. But I like COVID-19, I actually studied the issue, talked to a lot of doctors, and I came to a very firm understanding that, like I said, that I don't make public decisions unless I have 4 completely solid reasons to say absolutely 100% that I think this is correct. And so Circus 19 really was Circus 19. There's no question. As far as the whole carbon print issue, it seems to be moving in that direction too. I don't know if I have 4 reasons for it yet, but definitely it seems like even if it's true, it's still being politicized. There's no doubt about that aspect, right? Even, first of all, it's not true as far as I can tell, but I haven't sat down and asked myself completely what are the 4 different aspects from which I see that there's a problem with this in a proper academic way. But my feeling is that it's a lie. And even if it's not a lie, it's still being politicized, right? So now we're being told, oh, you can't have normal natural cows because now cows are destroying, according to them, the environment because cows give out too much burps and gas, and it's just ridiculous to me. So yeah, that will be something that I will look into, inshallah. And thank you for bringing that to my attention. Peace by love, or no, peace, joy, love.
Assalamu alaikum,
Salam.
Honorable. This is Sister Malalai from Afghanistan. 2 things. Number one, first of all, thank you so much. This was a very informative lecture and I really appreciated it. Number 2, the cows issue. We've had hundreds of cows that have just been dying around the country, especially in the south and in the east, in the regions that people have been going back into agriculture, which has been the most resilient to the economic sanctions and other games that they have been trying to play for the past year, ever since this government came into power. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I wanted to just bring up regarding the lecture that you gave, now this is something very new for me. This is the first time that I've heard it, and I have not done my homework to go into actually studying this, but there's a gentleman who I never really paid much attention to up until maybe a week and a half, and I believe I may have shared his Rumble link with you on our chat, and that his name is 107 or 107 or something of that nature. And he's an American man, remains faceless on whenever he speaks. And he brought up the connection between the British royal family having the right to appoint a king according as set forth in the Israeli constitution. Now, this is a pretty, sort of major statement. Again, I don't know if this is true.
I actually saw that, and just so you know, okay, so I went to the Israeli constitution, Israeli. I'm going to have to go through this and find it. But there was a clause that I found that even though it didn't talk about a king, there was a clause in the Israeli constitution that talked about the dissolution or the dissolving of the government if there's a need. And I thought to myself, I've never seen, like from the constitution, I've read a few, not all, but I've read at least maybe 10 different constitutions. Like the US Constitution does not have a clause or an article that says if the government gets dissolved, right? And it's just weird to have something like this. It's almost like they have something in their constitution that allows, under certain circumstances, to have a new government, a different government. So I just thought that was very interesting. But I wasn't able to find it right now. I'll take one last question if there's any. Otherwise, we can inshallah adjourn. All right, inshallah. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكون من الخاسرين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر ونتوب إليك يا ربي يا الله. اللهم صل وسلم على محمد وعلى آل محمد. So inshallah, see you all soon if Allah wills. Assalamu alaikum.